evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. This is Syrrina Ahsan Ali Haque. I have a PhD and a postdoc in literary studies, English literature. My students learn to write fiction, non-fiction. I guide them through research methodology, academic creative writing, literary studies, as well as literary criticism. Furthermore, I have authored a few books, which I will be speaking about later on as well. I teach in different universities across the globe. I've been teaching in Keynote, LSE, GCU, University of Buffalo, University of London programs, with reference to my fiction and non-fiction that I write. They complement each other. They further elaborate the ideas that I have tried to churn, and they look into various ways of looking at it. Again, multi-perspectives through the lens of the fiction as well as the non-fiction. So with reference to this particular work also, I feel that I have chosen works which are very dear to me. And the books that I've written, as well as a few awards that I've been awarded, I feel my biggest reward has been when my students have excelled. And this is not just for the sake of saying. Even today, I plan on discussing two of my students' work. I'm extremely proud of them. They are prominent writers now, and I feel that the podium should be given to them, to all the writers, budding writers who are speaking about our fault lines and bringing them into our frame of reference also. So this is what I feel is my biggest award. Upcoming novel that I have a collection of short stories which is called Sand in the Castle, a collection of short stories, and then again my academic work, which speaks about fractures, fissures, schisms, and it kind of also speaks about the fluidity of home, while the fissures are very much there, of migrations, and then the mending and the repairing. All of this is taken into account. Maina Saga of Migrations is my upcoming novel, in which also I'm speaking about how these migrations become maybe a source of some kind of rebuilding. When I say rebuilding, it's never the same, but it's a new way of looking at it. This is why I chose the word chronotope also, because chronotope emits from dialogism, and my research work has been around dialogism. And the reason being, I felt that PhD dissertation as well as books have to live on forever. They shouldn't be for a decade or two. And what can live on forever? I thought about it and I said, of course, dialogue. And what is required the most is dialogue. If you go back to cave time, maybe there was a dialogue happening. And if, God forbid, there's an apocalyptic world ahead, there will be a dialogue between a bedrock and a riverbed also. So the dialogue will continue forever. This is something that is the need of the hour. It was and it will always be. Hence, my work was on dialogism. And somehow the other, I feel that chronotope, which is a dialogue between time and space, sits very well with this literary festival and the fault lines that you are speaking about. So my topic being Kintsugi of chronotopal schisms through contemporary literature. While I'm very skeptical in using the term contemporary, and I advise my students not to do so, I did it because, again, it is 2026 specific, this literary festival. So, and I'm choosing texts which are post-millennial mostly, except for Gunesekera's. So this can work very well with it. And I need to incorporate the newer texts that are coming in. Otherwise, literature in its essence has a chronotopal quality embedded within it. So moving on to the fractures and the frictions. Now, I thought about it when I was given this topic, and I said, am I going to dwell on the fractures and the friction as well as the schisms, or am I going to talk about something which is a product of this shift, for example, Earth? And I'll now share my slides for you to understand what I'm trying to say as well, a little visually. So quickly, I'm going to share my slides here. Okay, so this is my topic. And these are the books that I have written and some of the awards that I've acquired. So my whole contention was that this through tectonic plates shifting, we formed a new world. So these shifts are probably something that shape us as well, because I feel in my 5 decades of existence, many shifts have happened within myself also, which have shaped me. It's the butterfly effect. And they have not only reshaped me, but also rejoined some fractures and fractures. See, let's take the example of a bone, for example. I remember when my daughter broke her bone. I saw how her plum bruise moved from a crimson plum to a veiny rhizome of veins, and then it melted with the skin, or it just kind of merged a little bit with the skin, but never the same. The broken bone will never be the same. It will have a new way of looking at it, but it is possible for it to be rejuvenate and repair. This is a natural healing process within our bodies. So while we have it in our physical beings, it is also present in our mental and psychological beings also. So I'm talking about this connection, this joinery. And when I say joinery, that brings me to Kintsugi. Why Kintsugi? Because I feel Kintsugi is, as you know, a Japanese word which focuses on golden joinery. And this golden joinery I'll be talking about a lot. If you look at the bowl here, the gold is glowing, right? So what Kintsugi does is speaks about repairing broken pottery by mending it through with gold, silver, and other products. And it's derived from wabi-sabi, which speaks about imperfections and finding beauty in imperfections. We are all shaped in a certain manner and finding beauty in that, the idea of Shrek, I remember. But in these imperfections, we turn to, let's celebrate the differences. Let's celebrate the mending of ourselves. So, and then see the glowing scars. So this is what Kintsugi was. And why I chose Kintsugi is because I'm an interior designer by qualification as well. So not only do I design interiors, I also design exteriors. And one project that it's close to my heart is when I designed these set of buildings, which were in the same vicinity as an old building. So I wanted to keep the flavor of the old building, but I wanted to have a dialogue between the old and the new. How these two buildings, with the old carrying its multiple stories of inheritance, of inhabitants, and the new now in dialogue with this old building, not just a new building, but reframing it and bringing the old into its frame of reference. So this is what dialogism actually does. It creates a dialogue between old and new. And art, literature, architecture, they all have the capacity to do that. What they do is they are joined through these golden joineries. They join shattered truths, broken histories, and schisms of our human race. This golden joinery, what it becomes, like what it did for this bowl here, it becomes a way of rejuvenation, a rebirth. It doesn't have to be the same. Rejuvenation is not the same. It is looking back to the future and retelling it in a different manner, and which we all do. That's what we all do. We tell stories. We're all storytellers. See, but the moment we walk into a home or our workplace, we're telling what happened to us maybe a day ago or an hour ago or a few days or years ago. But in the course of retelling our stories, what we are doing is we are not going in a linear fashion. We will have gaps and ellipses. So to fill these gaps and ellipses for coherence, we're going to add our fiction to it. It reshapes the narrative completely. And when I spoke of my postdoc, it was on narrative shift, which I felt is just like the tectonic shift. So the narrative shifts with our retelling also. And the agendas behind the retelling are extremely important. For another talk or for another day, I can discuss that. But so when we conjoin these things together, the old and the new, and we conjoin the fractured stories, and we're building a new narrative, and which is fiction, right? So while fiction and truth can be binaries, I strongly don't believe in binaries, so much so that I have formulated this little formula, which is if you place these binaries black and white on this integer line, which is if you move it just a little bit here, black, it becomes whiter, grayer, and white a little bit here, it becomes grayer. So you have that many shades of gray. So there is an element of black and white and an element of white and black. The same goes for truth. If you move it just a little bit, it becomes very close to fiction, and the fiction becomes close. So while people say that fiction is a lie that tells the truth, I strongly believe and I say truth is fiction the moment it is retold. So hence, even dialogism and monologism, if you place history on one side and if you place fiction on one side, they carry each other's elements within it. History seems extremely monologic because of the institutionalization of it, that there is one institution which is telling you what to do. And in fiction, you have the capacity of the author, the writer, the actor, the characters, the stories, even the props, the setting, everything adds to it. And it has its own, each element has its own flavor and texture to it. And I'll just discuss that further as well. So these things are what make it possible for some form of golden joinery. And please don't take me wrong. I know you're a learned audience, but I've color-coded it just for the purpose of highlighting Kintsugi, that while space and time are two different things, but joined together, there is a possibility of not fusion, complete fusion, and I never speak of merging or synthesis. I remember when I was presenting my first book launch call came from University of Delhi. And being a Pakistani, I felt for my book, Dialogue on Partition, Literature Knows No Borders, I felt, okay, the dialogue has begun. And I'm the amazing audience. And the professor asked me, are you speaking of something like Deen-e Ilahi in your work? And I said, no. When you talk of Deen-e Ilahi, it's talking about synthesis. What dialogism in literature speaks about is giving the podium to all, right? No synthesis per se. It's like potluck. It's like khichdi. If you know of potluck, there is each and every grain of rice retains its texture and flavor. Each and every grain of lentil does the same. Your cumin, your salt, your garlic, everything retains its texture. Yet a new dish is formed, which is potluck. And this is what dialogism does. It does not dissolve or assimilate per se. So my talk is going to be on how we are going to retain those scars, but we're going to make them glow. So this talk focuses on the topic fault lines in fiction, writing the fractures, exploring how contemporary storytelling, narratology, and themes delineate possibilities of reconstruction through resilience in writing. When I say reconstruction or deconstruction for that matter, it has to be constructed first to be deconstructed or reconstructed. I aim to, so looking back to the future again. Looking back to arrive at the future, right? I aim to discuss how time and space, while fractured by partition, war, and gender spaces, is reconstructed through narratives and storytelling. The art of Kintsugi celebrates breakage through repair in the same manner schismatic spaces may be restored by art and literature, adding the space over time rather than subtracting anything to it. Restoration through literature is a dialogic process, communing a dialogue between past, present, and future. I strongly believe, because Bakhtin's idea of utterance is that when you say something, it is in response to something that was said before, and it is in anticipation of something that will be said later. So there is already a commune between past, present, and future. And novels and literature and art has the capacity to form that linkage. This chronotopal faculty is traced in the works of William Dalrymple, Faiqa Mansab, Romesh, Gunesekera, Kanza, Javed as examples of shocks and aftershocks at the fault lines. And you will see these shocks and aftershocks in their works. I cannot delve deep into them, but I will be speaking on them. And on a later day or something, I would like to speak more on these works because I feel that they are extremely important to talk about. So my work, I have in my own fiction and non-fiction work portrayed the possibility of home being a facade built on a fault line. Yet its fluidity has the capacity to repair, restore, and reassemble structures through time and space. In Dialogue on Partition, Literature Knows No Borders, I have located inherent individualities of idiosyncratic voices of narrators, characters, and writers of novels, not just one set of perspective, but multiple perspectives. As promulgation of dialogue in the face of contentious event of partition and post-partition conflict, because the line that Radcliffe drew, that is still causing these schisms, these fractures, constant, persistent. So in my short story collection, Sarah and the Castle, a collection of short stories, the concept of home is fractured. through self-victimization or a broken self. But a possibility of restoration is through the process of Kintsugi, or what I say, individuation in the psychological terms. Since all art and literature for me is encapsulated, this is my celebrated phrase, in who am I? I believe there is only one theme that all art and literature adheres to, and that is who am I? Who is our social construct? I is our self, and there is a constant contestation between these two identities and the multiple selves that we have. There is a contest going on between those two. And what is Kintsugi in this is the question mark, because this quest has to go on forever. For example, I looking at my 94-year-old who was a commando father, and then looking at him and thinking that he must be thinking, what am I? Who am I in this frail body? So going back to literature, how this is the only theme. If you look at Oedipus Rex, if you look at Agamemnon, Odysseus, the Odyssey, and Hamlet, Macbeth, Sylvia Plath, Philip Larkin, Ghalib, Iqbal, Fez, Ki Jana Main Kaun, this is the prevalent theme. And this is the dialogue between who and I, and the quest is our Kintsugi. Maina Saga of Migrations, which is my upcoming novel, features multiple schisms in a journey of nation from victim to perpetrator. From 1944 to 2003, it moves on to 2014, turmoil as well, but post 9/11, it focuses on that. The Maina bird symbolizing possibilities of fright, flight, or fight. It could be fight, flight, or fright in the face of pre-partition, partition, and post 9/11. So we have a time frame and we have a partitioned land also, which is a chronotope, global narrative shift, which can be a tectonic shift for that matter. This was part of my postdoctoral research as well. Throughout my literary journey, I've also tried to maintain a dialogue between my fiction and non-fiction. I have endeavored to maintain this between literary criticism and my creative work, which in turn connects literary space through inherent polyphonic voices of characters, authors, and theorists. So, how fluidity in time and space affects healing is again part of this talk. While I've spoken to you already about truth and fiction, but I'm also going to say that it's very important to speak about Mansab, Gunesekera, Javed, and Dalrymple, and myself, is because we are going to now bring in South Asian spaces, which has been shown by these writers, myself included, as battlegrounds. However, the characters treat through it as saviors rather than just warriors. Now, the savior-warrior, I feel, binary is also blurred here, because look at, for example, Philip Larkin, or you look at Hemingway, they were ambulance drivers. They were in the battleground saviors of warriors. And it takes a warrior to be able to save as well. So these writers are saviors of our plural truths. Therefore, while fiction is a lie, like I said, that tells the truth, I believe truth is fiction the moment it is retold. Memory distances us from the truth, and that distance is then covered through time and space. This talk elucidates the power of fiction in conjoining that fractured time and space to recreate new ways of looking at fault lines. So moving on to the topic, again, chronotope. It is derived from dialogism. And dialogism, I'm not going to go deep into its literary theory, but I'm going to just quickly give you a recap of what it is. It's a relationship between past, present, and future. Like I said, it's an utterance which is in response to something said in the past, and it's in anticipation to something that will be said in the future. It is what Bakhtin says is that word is dynamic, relational, engaged in a process of endless redescriptions of the world. If world is a space, we are redescribing it in different forms, and each one of us does it differently. Hence, a dialogic novel encompasses the world, and not just one world, many worlds, and it brings into all. What it does is it brings all perspectives into its frame of reference, the other's perspective into the frame of reference. So while perspective is a space occupied, what Kintsugi does is it shows how characters, authors, settings, and readers, only if you bring them into your perspective, they can lead to some form of meaning. Isolated, they can't. So dialogic novel celebrates this pluralistic renegotiation of social and ethical spaces. A dialogic novel carries within itself history, fiction, characters, authors, readers, and settings, while history, like I said, is very monologic in the sense that an institution or a historian is behind it. It does engage with fiction at times, because again, they are relying on memory to narrate or relay something, and that will lead to addition of fiction, and that is where it becomes a little dialogic. The novel has the capacity to show these diversity of speeches and individual voices, and these are some of the components of the dialogism. Again, I will not delve deep into them. I have many examples to explain these, but I will on another day maybe discuss this. But heteroglossia is multiple perspectives, how these voices can remain and coexist together despite and maintain their distinctness. This is the most important element, maintaining distinctness. And these temporal spaces in chronotope and spatial spaces, they form a relationship. They fuse but remain distinct. Polyphony is derived from musicology, and what happens here is that you have each and every instrument that is given its worth. Carnivalesque is about uncrowning the king, and humor leading to truth, which is multiple. But we're not going to be delving into that. We'll be talking about chronotope mostly. And chronotope, like I said, is a relationship between time and space. And Bakhtin relied on Einstein, and Einstein spoke of how time is related only and is important due through its interaction with an event. For example, if you're talking about post-colonialism, post is time, but an event of colonization has to have happened. If I'm talking about 1 p.m. right now, it is time, but I will only look at the clock, and the clock will only have its importance if I'm relating it to an event. And then, like I'm speaking right now, and it has to end at a certain time. Then, so event is very important with Einstein. Einsteinian ideas about inseparability of time and event are important. So there's no chronology of events. That changes the change that time and space bring about is a product of the interwoven relationship between time and space, just like the joinery of Kintsugi. And we will discuss that further when we discuss these novels, which are white novels. It's India as well as Britain, Great Britain, by the way, and it's 18th century. So the space is there. You have Sufi storyteller, plural truths of Leila and Mira, time shifts, Afghanistan to USA, Kanza Javed's What Remains After the Fire. You have Barsati, the act of rape and birth, storeroom, rooftop, school, the pain will dilute with time. This is something that over and over again, I've seen in all her stories, that they've been told that, pretend or give it time and everything will be okay. And under this scaffolding, the murder of the dog is the murder of the human self. So even in Gunesekera, you have winter, house, a country, old renovation. These are the words. And I'll now speak in detail about all these little things that I've spoken of with relation to these novels. Let's look at William Dalrymple's White Mughals first. White Mughals in itself, Kintsugi. It's joinery. So what had happened was in the 18th century, the British and the Dutch and the Portuguese traders that came to India, they, of course, the climate conditions were such that they couldn't wear their uniforms. So they started wearing Indian cotton clothes, and they started eating, because what was available was our food, and our food is compatible with our climate. They started eating our food, and of course, when you're eating our food, you're eating it with your hands, so the mannerism changed. This mannerism, and then they started marrying Indian princesses here, because of course they were living here. So this news, what happened was that between this symbiotic relationship of the two civilizations, which I'll read out here, it has become clear to me that the relationship between India and Britain was a symbiotic one. But the polyvocality within two distinct identities may have been eradicated had both dissolved and assimilated wholly. But dialogism does not talk about assimilation, or it talks about a newness that comes out of it. Dialogic and chronotopal relationships created a new truth, and this truth is this image here of white Mughals, these children who are white and in Mughal attires, because they carry the Mughal gene as well. And they're living in that area, and then they were sent away because the British thought that in creating this hybrid child and in connecting with this soil, so much so that merging with it or assimilating with it, what will happen is that you will lose your Britishness, and they wanted to sell their Britishness through the colonization. So the hybrid child was a threat. It was the contact between two civilizations might cause a clash, but it may also create a third space. They were scared of this third space where all voices can be heard. Kintsugi is that cultivated space where new relationships are produced. If you look at Sufi and Bhakti movements, which William Dalrymple has also delved into, I've tried to delve into it in my work, and I know Meher Nagar Masroor has delved into it, and of course Faiqa Mansab has also. These are they create this third space where all voices are heard, and where there is possibility of eclectic God as well. In my work, I have spoken about this a lot. So he writes further, Dalrymple, only bigotry, prejudice, racism, and fear drive them apart, but they have met and mingled in the past. They will do so again. And this is the possibility of a dialogue. This is the possibility of Kintsugi. Moving on to Faiqa Mansab, Sufi storyteller. The image in itself has this element of fusion and things happening over a period of time in the Sufi. So when Faiqa speaks of Sufi storyteller, she's connecting a past, Sufism past. It's so interesting that while I was thinking about this book and other books also, and I was thinking through this, how we're connected to the past in our names also. Faiqa Mansab, for example, or Syrrina Ahsan, for example. We are carrying our present name and we are carrying an old name with us. So these connections are very much there. Same if you have the Sufi story. When someone else is telling the story in the future, this story will be told further. So you're connecting it. And what she does is she taxonomically divides her work into the beginning of the end, the beginning, the end of the beginning. You have time frame already there. And then the space and the time shifts between, say, Afghanistan and America, but also between the caves and the wombs. The time seems to be still because they're not connected with the events that are happening outside, and neither is the child in the womb nor in the people in the cave. However, space-time seems still in these caves and wombs, but growing fetus, growing children are proof of how time moves on in the single space, making these spaces dynamic, full of growth. And this growth is, again, going to lead to some form of Kintsugi. So you have to acknowledge construction to deconstruct. The chain has to continue. When she begins in one of her chapters, she writes one of her paragraphs, who was she? It takes me back to my concept of who am I? Is she connecting all she's here? All she's. There is this camaraderie of women, which I saw in Kanza Javed's work as well. So the quest of the question mark, who was she, is very much there. And this dead body, which she's questioning about, even in her presence, she persists. Just like truth, for me, persists even in its absence. Even in her absence, she is persisting. This dead body is persisting. Through, again, maybe the camaraderie of the women, or maybe the detective, maybe the mother, the crone, which I will speak of further. In book 2, she speaks about retelling of Mira Hashmat's life, but through Sufi stories, she merges the realm of truth and fiction. Tradition and new. She speaks about the mother, the maiden, the crone. For me, it could be past, present, future. For me, it's also Dharti Ma, the goddess, and the Gaian. The Gaian aspect is very important here because Gaian Greek mythology is a self-healing mother. Mother Earth is supposed to self-heal, right? Just like when a woman gives birth to a child, she self-heals, right? So there is this element of self-healing in all feminine storytelling also. When I say feminine, I don't mean just because Faiqa is a female. Female has nothing to do with this. When I say feminine, it means feminine consciousness. If a male has feminine consciousness, a female has male consciousness as well. And that takes me back to my binaries, that these are not binaries. There are moments when my feminine consciousness is more prominent than my male masculine consciousness, and there are moments of my masculine consciousness being very prominent. So these Sufi storytellers, by their matriarchal way of life, by their way of camaraderie, they are showing a self-healing process, which through their maybe murder mysteries, solving, deciphering, they are trying to arrive at who was she, and that she is many. So naked bodies are also, I feel, they are means of undressing the truth, uncovering dead bodies, and the murder of our inner selves here. But the rejuvenation and the regrowth through Mira and Leila is very much there. So healing is in process. Faiqa uses this maternal instinct and creates a matriarchal way of looking at things. She challenges the dominant discourse of fairy telling, which is drilled into our childhood. It was in mine also, carrying the burden of the dominant West. What Faiqa has done is she's brought the Sufi stories into the frame of reference. She's brought transcendental truths into multiple truths into the frame of references through the traversing time and space. She's brought South Asia into the frame of reference. And also, Hasina says, you're bringing history into new perspective with stories. So these stories are redescribed in fashions where Alice in the Wonderland, where Red Riding Hood are all mingled with the Sufi stories, and a new form is created. Because this is very important. What Faiqa is looking to is something through Leila, she's trying to go back to the future, which I was speaking about. She's trying to unravel the labyrinthine darkness of the caves of Afghanistan and delve into the recesses and shadows, maybe, of the fault lines of the caves, and plunge into it and befriend her multiple selves. Through Leila, Mila, and Kamli, this constant metamorphosis is happening, and these are the saviors, because what they have to do is they have to make sure that the blood and the breath does not congeal in the chest, which is a space. It has to keep flowing, and it flows through the stories. With Kanza Javed's work, I chose this particular cover because I'm going to speak a lot about the ashes as well. All of her stories extremely well crafted, but the one story that stays with me is My Bones Hold a Stillness. In her words, it echoes within my bones. I'll just read a little bit from it. It started as a small flame, flickering in the depths of my stomach until it began to spread, and the fire hit me like a lightning bolt, struck me silent, left a little ember. A fire started and swallowed me whole, burning every single cell in my body. I was ash. But the storm diffuse the burning flame. So there is something that is going to wash away the burnt self, and something that will heal. She let Franny heal her. She let silence sometimes heal her. She pretended to be healed as well. Silencer is the name of the gun, but it is the loudest. Silence is the loudest because it's louder than shrieks, because I feel that it stays and lingers on within you. I feel it is something that carries pain, empathy of generations. It's archetypal. It lasts longer. It settles inside. And what you need is to kick to be able to live. Just like Faiqa's character could not let the breath or the blood congeal in the chest, she could not let this character also congeal. I connected mostly with it because of course, the metaphors she used, the figures of speech, her craft was very well shown in this particular story. While I connect to other stories as well, but this one in particular, and I connected to the character of Zara because I feel somehow and other her character Zara and Varidol also, but because I felt I could connect to the Zainab, my character, with Zara as well. So Varidol, I'm going to also speak about, but what saved them was graffiti, the art. It released me from the grief I had been nurturing. Dure Shavar was healed. A dead body was healed, all whole, recomplained. Sometimes you have to do it all yourself. You have to save yourself. You have to choose to live. You cannot let the blood congeal. Her silence spoke volumes. Her stillness revealed the truth. So she speaks about this camaraderie between women also. When she says, but you were a woman also in Rani, when the Dadi is speaking to Rani, who's also Nargis, by the way. So there's this karma that she speaks of, that she was nothing. Now I am left with nothing. I am nothing. So she's asking for some kind of cleansing, some kind of atonement for rape, for injustice. She's talking on behalf of the Reshavars and even Dadi, dementia, after the silence what happens. After the death, what happens? And that's what brings me to the remains. What remains after the fire? Ashes. See, ashes are not something that you can just do away with. They are, you scatter them in the river, you dust to dust, ashes to ashes. There is this element of rejuvenation. There's this element of rebirth, regrowth. Ashes have potassium and phosphorus in them. Ashes, stubble, crop burning for regrowth, for rejuvenation. So these are very important images. What remains the fire after the fire is charred, but it remains. It is there. But what happens to her characters is that all of Kanza's characters, including the very doll itself, suffocate. But they don't suffocate and because of a pillow. They suffocate because of the silence inside. Interestingly, the very doll is trying to live also. It's trying to draw on its breath. Zara is also trying to draw on her breath. What it's trying to do is it's going to silence the silent. The trap is to be silenced. And how is she silenced? In my hold bones hold stillness. The mother, when she told her mother of her child abuse or whatever, I'm not going to get into the detail of it. Because I would want you to read her work. When I told my mother about my uncle, she said it didn't happen. Just like the 9 months of impregnation did not happen. The birth did not happen in Rani. In the 6 weeks of grief led to a release. 4th of July, fireworks, these things we have to take into account. Why there is a fracture, like the rape, birth happened, and that birth is something you have to take into account. You can't just forget about it. So after the fire, there is going to be a release. There's going to be fireworks even after the fire. So the space of Barsati is very important here. Scaffolding is very important. The scaffolding is a structure that provides protection and is protecting a small little dog. It is protecting our humanity, and killing that dog is showing how humanity has been killed. And apartment number 14, again, a space here. Then you have under the pillow is a space as well. The dark storeroom, the hot rooftop, my bedroom, my body is a space. My body turned into a house I no longer owned. I simply paid rent to exist in it. My body became a piece of colonized land. Pain makes a home inside a body. Trauma carries a passport. This image of time and space constantly trying to find some kind of repair, some kind of rejuvenation through the ashes is very much prevalent in her work. And she questions others by saying, when you hit an animal, you have to keep going. Sadly, that's the way it is. And don't look back. Only her character looked back and went looking for the hurt deer. This is where the rejuvenation happens. And that brings me to Romesh Gunesekera's short story, House in the Country. So house and country are spaces, right? Of course. But time is very important. The house which was, and the house which is, and the house it will be with renovations. These were the times in troubled times in Sri Lanka. What will follow after these troubled times? There is a silence before the storm. Ray had come home. Now, home is a very fluid concept here again. When he is in Sri Lanka, he looks to London for home. When he's in London, he looks to Sri Lanka for home. And he comes home. He goes back here and comes here and tries to refurbish something that has depleted. And he's constantly trying to rebuild this old house, replaster it, rehang it, to be able to connect to it. Ray knew it was never possible to go back to exactly the same things. But at the same time, he felt the old world never quite passes away. Suddenly, the frame shifts and you find yourself back where you started. Things had to improve, he said. Charred remains of the shop, going back to what remains after the fire. There, something does. The charred remains are also extremely important for something new to come out of it, some new way of looking at burning. But then countries have been in flames before in the world, not known. So let's talk about this world that was not known. Let's talk about the burnt cells. This is where I have also tried to cover how this burnt self is encased within a body. And a lot of my stories focus around this image of body being a space. in this upcoming novel, A Saga of Migrations, it is, again, a way of looking towards the bird, which, by the way, migrates in hostile conditions, but is looking towards a new way of looking at maybe an aerial way of looking at the turmoil, at the contestation, at the issues. And while I was getting this book cover designed by Naila Amir, I remember we had these buildings, and with this new war happening, the same issues are still prevalent while I'm talking about, say, pre-partition, partition, post 9/11. So going back to Sand in the Castle, my first story is from boundaries to boundaries. So space, right? But from one boundary, say from Pakistan to Canada, we forget that when we leave one set of boundaries, we're moving on to another set of boundaries. That set of boundaries will have its own rules, regulations, own boxing. So we're talking about a boxing effect. Burqa is that boxing effect, yet unboxed. I'll tell you how it's unboxed. It begins in the story Burqa begins with, this is your new home. This is what you will live in forever from now. And she said, live in? So this becomes her home. And she said, yes, live in. This is going to protect you just like a house protects you, your shelter, your refuge, your home. There are wolves out there. So she says, why don't you put a muzzle on the wolves rather than box me in this, right? So one day, what happens to her is one day in January, when I had just taken a bath, I came out of the toilet to find out that one of the guests seated on the charpa, he looked straight at my face, my forbidden face, and then he gazed at my newly sprouted breast. He grunted within his throat. Was he the wolf? I rushed toward the hook on the door of for my burqa. A space. She needed a space of refuge. For the first time, I is that space also, wanted my eyes, which were space, my nose, my mouth, my ears to be covered. When her mother comes and she sees her sitting inside a room wearing a burqa, she's alone in that room now. I was inside the room. My mother came in and saw me wearing it. Why are you wearing the burqa? Amma, I'm living in it. So finding that regrowth or something by unboxing herself and then boxing herself back to find that refuge. So again, the stories in Boundaries from Boundaries also, she tries to leave Pakistan, but when she goes to Canada, because home is so fluid, there is sand in this castle, that it keeps shifting constantly. She is, rather than trying to mend herself, she's trying to look to others for some kind of happiness. Let's look inside ourselves for happiness. And for that, again, another home, another dimension, very chronotopal dimension is the time. Sometimes we look to other objects for relationships also because of the loneliness that Zainab felt. So there was the Big Ben in London. She could see from all windows in her apartment where she felt lonely. So the 15 little chimes after every 15 minutes, or those chimes after every 15 minutes, were very important for her because this was a conversation with Big Ben. So strangely, Big Ben had become an entity in their home, almost like a big brother of Zainab's. The redness of the mattress continued to haunt Zainab, but Big Ben continued to be there for her. She tried to join those scarred fault lines, the miscarried child through this Big Ben. Time, and of course, how time and home can connect each other. Tea leaves, my story. At a distance, I could see a trace of Adam's Peak. So in Sri Lanka, of course, you have the Adam's Peak, but which is this Adam? Which Adam's Peak is it? Is it the man's Adam Peak? Is it the patriarchal world? Is it the colonizer's world? Because there's a lot of mention of the colonizer here. But at a distance, she sees it. So it lingers on. It is still there in the Eden of Sri Lanka. It is very much present there. And Nadia, who is British as well as Pakistani, coming to Sri Lanka, she becomes the perfect blend of a tea. Her mother, who is British, is also looking for a home. When she gets a call, while she's living in Pakistan, she gets a call from London. She says, "Oh, I got a call from home." So this concept of connecting Britain and connecting the colonizer with the colonized is very much present in these tea leaves, because where did the home of the inhabitants go? Did they lose that home? And now it is the home of the British. And when they left, what kind of home did they leave? So you mean the legacy of enslaving the inhabitants, colonizing them, torturing them to work in extreme conditions, burdening them to carry their loads of tea leaves for their cups of afternoon tea in an English drawing room, the space, while they boasted of their successes over the black man and just over the black man's incompetence. Here I'm trying to speak about how the home shifted from the inhabitants to the British, back to the inhabitants, and how this rescarring and scarring happened. In the cocoon, of course, another space, the story, what was it that made me love myself so? The Golden Girl's clan. So what happens to this Golden Girl? Who is this Golden Girl? Is it her alter ego, or is she a golden joinery? Does she fracture her? Does she join this fractured self of hers that she says that this Golden Girl's glance was reassuring me that I exist as someone other than Jazeb's wife. I was evolving. I was becoming a butterfly. But what happens to cocooned butterfly if taken out of its cocoon before time? A regrowth process requires time and space. And Kintsugi is that healing process for broken bones, for veiny rhizomes to merge with the skin, produce surrounding it, to scars, which surgical scars or your own scars, which fade but become a part of your body, which is your home. So just a recap of how this is, again, the two civilizations met in white Mughals. Kintsugi is possible. It's possible through the ashes also, while ashes are a form of regrowth. Sufi storyteller spins her own web of tales around the Sufi tales, creating a new world conjoining centuries. Gunesekera, the post-apocalyptic dystopian island, was it ever Eden, or is he looking to it as Eden, as paradise? Then Haque sees the world through, myself, of course, sees the world through the lens of a bird. Is the bird ready for fright, flight, or fight, or fight, fright, or flight, or flight, fright, or fight? From Jalandhar to Lahore, to Chirag, to Rawalpindi, to New York, to LA, back to Lahore and Jalandhar. All these shifts happening from 1944 to 2003 to 2014, the narrative shifts, opening new avenues of dialogue in a war-torn world. So, which brings me to the idea of this particular literary festival and how important and significant this was when I was informed of the tagline, or I was informed of the theme. So this is the comment that I had for it. Ananke Literature Festival 2026, with its theme Fault Lines and Unmasking, offers a means to shed off the facade of a safe zone like home and look beneath the surface at the fissures and fractures due to persistent friction and compression. These fractures are due to that. The array of topics this year interweave fragmented spaces, forming a nexus for a release through a veiny rhizome of dialogue and stories. You need to release through that rain. You can't just open the floodgates. They have to come out, branching out, reinvigorating the ruptured inhabitants of lands built on fault lines. So with this, I'm going to actually discuss with you what I've taken out of this theme, what I can do as a writer or as academician, and what you guys can do as well. So let's see inside the crevices of these fault lines, the scars that glow. Let's make space for and time past and time present, make them mingle to produce a future that carries the burden of the past, but ignites fireworks. And that takes me back to Kanza Javed's work, where after the release, they go and sit and look at the fireworks of 4th of July. So ignites fireworks within us, leaving behind ashes of rejuvenation and rebirth sprinkled from the sky. And this is how our writers, our literary critics, academia can now join these fissures and keep them glowing forever. Thank you so much. Thank you, Ananke. Thank you, Sabine. Thank you, audience, for being with me in this journey. Thank you so much.